Amber Heard. She appeals. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Amber Heard. She appeals. You can hear Johnny Depp and Elon Musk say, well, not to us, she does not. However, this isn't about her appealing as a person, but rather the fact, of course, that she's now filed an appeal against the libel judgment. Of course, earlier this year, much of the world watched as the televised trial, took place between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, which ultimately was a double win for Johnny Depp, firstly in terms of his resounding victory in the court of public opinion, where the majority of people were rooting for him and saw Amber Heard as a liar and an abuser, and also in the legal sense also, as there was a judgment against her to the tune of $10.35 million, vindicating Depp. Of course, at the time she didn't accept it, issuing a statement, and then has disappeared off to Mallorca, part of a retreat from the repeated threats to control posed by adverse press publicity, social media disapproval of her conduct, and of course the fact that she is facing the possibility of the enforcement of that judgment against her and potential criminal investigations vis-a-vis activity in Australia. And therefore is putting herself out of reach in terms of potential action being taken more against her. All part, of course, of her narcissism seeking to nullify the threats to control that have mounted up. Narcissists often appeal, not always, but often do so in the context of litigation, because their narcissism simply will not allow them to accept the outcome against them. Narcissists are notoriously litigious, particularly those that have access to money. Some narcissists that don't act for themselves, and of course you'll regularly know that in those instances that where they're a lawyer that act for themselves, they have a fool for their client. Even non-lawyers who act for themselves are acting foolishly because there's no objectivity. And often you will find certain narcissists that do act for themselves, clogging up the court system with a meritorious application after application after application, as the court bends over backwards to accommodate them because they are a litigant in person. More successful and wealthier narcissists, of course, utilize lawyers as hired guns for the purposes of seeking to nullify a threat to control where they are being sued, or to assert control where they're going after somebody else. And they regularly turn to the law as a method of economically outgumming an opponent for the purposes of asserting control. Now, of course, not all legal disputes involve narcissists, but often they do as a consequence of the fact, as I've explained in alternative videos, that where you have two individuals who are not narcissists, they tend to resolve a difficulty before it gets into a courtroom. Why? They have emotional empathy for the other person's position. They don't have an intrinsic need for control. And often those situations arise out of a misunderstanding, which once the misunderstanding has been addressed, everybody sorts things out and they move on. They're able to compromise. But throw a narcissist into the mix, and that aspect of the need for control and fuel complicates matters. This results in the narcissist using the law as a tool to browbeat their opponent, whether an unaware narcissist, not recognizing that they are using the law to get that control. They'll often talk about, it's not the money, it's the principle. But what really they're saying is, it's not the money, it is the control that I seek. And of course, Amber Heard is no different. As an unaware narcissist, her narcissism is offended by the fact that she lost against Depp, that she truly believes that she is a victim of domestic violence, not a perpetrator, that the finding of the court is erroneous, and she repeatedly looks to find ways to obviate it. Now, as I've explained, Johnny Depp is no saint, and if you followed my intriguing series about the analysis of the pair, you'll understand why I say that. But the Times tells us Amber Heard has filed an appeal against the libel judgment that ordered her to pay her former husband, Johnny Depp, $10.35 million. A report by Joshua Thurston of this afternoon. After a high-profile trial, the actress, 36, was found to have defamed Depp, 59, by portraying herself as a victim of domestic abuse. Heard's brief cites a lack of clear and convincing evidence for actual malice as one of the 16 grounds for appeal. Well, certainly the evidence that I saw did support that she was motivated by malice, and of course, malice does exist with a narcissist. The actress also claims that Depp and his attorneys confused the court by using statements she had made before writing the 2018 opinion piece for the Washington Post on which the trial centred. Heard states that this led to the jury to believe she was on trial for statements she had made before the publication of the article. Straws grasping at springs to mind. The trial court erred in allowing Mr. Depp to argue or suggest at trial that the jury could award damages based on statements or conduct occurring prior to the publication of the challenged op-ed, the filing reads. Heard was awarded $2 million in damages for her countersuit after Depp's lawyer, Adam Waldman, called her claims of abuse a hoax. The filing says the fact that the two sides were found to have defamed one another was inherently and irreconcilably inconsistent and was enough for the judge to set the whole thing aside. The filing also says that the fact that Depp lost a similar libel lawsuit in the United Kingdom against The Sun in 2020 should have been allowed into evidence. The brief also puts forward that Heard was sharing First Amendment protected opinions. The filing argues that the trial judge wrongly ruled that the statements Depp challenged in the opinion piece were actionable as statements of fact rather than non-actionable expressions of opinion. So that's all right. So you can go around saying that X is a paedophile, but it's just my opinion, so you can't sue me. See how you get on with that. And actionable as defamation by implication. The trial court erred in denying the motion to set aside the jury's verdict with regard to Mr. Depp's failure to provide that the allegedly defamatory statements and the challenged op-ed each conveyed a defamatory meaning about him by implication, and that any such implication was both designed and intended by Ms. Heard, the document says. Heard's legal team also take issue with the conclusion that she wrote the article's headline. The trial court erred in denying the motions to strike and to set aside the jury's verdict with regard to Mr. Depp's failure to prove publication by Ms. Heard of the statement. I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change, the document says. Depp and Heard met while working on The Rum Diary, a 2011 film based on the novel of the same name, written by Depp's late friend Hunter S. Thompson. They married in 2015 and Heard filed for divorce 15 months later. This attempt to assert control is being done through litigation by seeking to set aside the judgment and appeal against the refusal of the judge to do so previously is an attempt to nullify the continuing threat to control posed by the fact that she lost. Some people would say, get on with your life, do some more films, put it behind you, but she can't. Her narcissism will not let her. This isn't to say that she sits at home in this Mallorcan hideaway, gnashing her teeth and wailing all the time about what happened to her. No, she will only respond in such a way as and when the issue of her defeat and or Johnny Depp comes up on her radar. If it's mentioned, if it's in the press, if a lawyer writes to her about when are you going to pay, it brings Johnny Depp and the case onto her radar to cause her to then need to nullify that threat to control. It's not that it sits at the heart of her burning a huge hole in her each and every day. It only matters when it comes up on the radar, but when it does, her narcissism needs to do something about it, and it has now decided to compel her lawyers to file this appeal. We shall, of course, see where it gets to. But what are the observations about people below the line in the Times, having seen all of this, having gone on for such a period of time? And, of course, the trial that many people watched earlier this year. What are people's views about what they've witnessed? Somerset Mick writes, maybe Heard and Mrs. Vardy, this is Rebecca Vardy, the wife of the footballer Jamie Vardy, who was trounced in court by Colleen Rooney, maybe Heard and Mrs. Vardy could go and inhabit another planet for a while. Big angry countryman responds, I thought they were already on the planet litigation. Chloe Dione, 10 million is not a large enough award for them to even attempt to lower it. She will probably lose more money in the long run on attorney and filing fees. Then comes bankruptcy. Andrew 1774 states, keeps her in the public eye though, where she can promote herself to generate value, otherwise she's totally insolvent. Jed Florex is to the point, you lied, you lost, get over it. Thomas G. Whittington, however, states Amber claims to be an abused spouse and she's fully entitled to her appeal. Well, she is, But of course, it's not based upon objective decent grounds, but her subjective narcissism. He goes on to state, the vilification of her on social media by Team Depp has been appalling. Incognito responds, Amber was found to be a liar, wasn't she? And more abusive than Mr. Depp, as well as downright disgusting and petulant to my mind. She deserves everything she gets. How often are women held accountable for domestic violence? It's too easy to play the victim in a system which neglects actual abuse and focuses on women to the detriment of men and children. Dastardly responds, she's entitled, all right. Stephen adds, well said, misandry is rife. Thomas G. Warrington replies, what she deserves is what the court process decides she deserves, not what you and an army of faceless social media warriors decide. Women frequently get away with domestic abuse of their partners and often with a negative impact on their children, but this case needs to be dealt with on its own merits. Incognito. So we can't express our opinion. Why then is there a comment section? Why do you engage with it? If it was a male celebrity, would you have the same concerns? Perhaps, but I doubt it. The very fact that she thought she could manipulate the system because she is a woman is the reason that people need to speak up. If that means a spoiled and abusive nobody has her feelings hurt, then for one, I don't care. She knows what to do if she wants this to go away. Pay and stop disputing the findings against her. If she doesn't, then that's on her. Dastardly. She claims there was no malice in her actions, like that makes it okay. And of course, that is a typical response of a narcissist, not Dastardly's observation, but rather, well, I didn't mean for it to happen, so it's okay. Well, often that's the case. The mid-range narcissist, for instance, doesn't actually mean for it to happen in the sense of what you'll accuse them of, because they think they're the victim. I only had an affair because you made me do it. I only hit you because of what you said to me. You were nasty to me first. Pat Mustard observes, scheming pathological wannabe gets upended in court. The sequel. Dandy Highwayman. I'm amazed that she can still come up with the cash for more legal moves. S. Atkins. Perjurer makes new claims in court. Okay, and this warrants coverage. Peter Simple. Well, she would say that, wouldn't she? DT. Will Rebecca Vardy do likewise? I do hope so. Tom Nicholas, she just can't let it go. She seems intense and obsessional. Also, part of me thinks she likes the attention and has nothing else going on to gain it. Doc Savage, she just won't let it lie. The problem with the American system. Alistair Moore, I thought Heard had to deposit $8.5 million with the court before she can appeal. This comment violated her policy rights. She gave notice of appeal. That costs nothing except a small legal bill and is a good strategy before the deadline runs out. Not clear how things stand with her liability insurance coverage. She will need to escrow the $8.5 million to perfect the appeal. Accordingly, it would appear that this has been done, of course, to avoid running out of time, and the appeal doesn't look like it's going to actually move forward until such time as she gets some money. The fact is, James Mauer writes, her, Vardy and Harry's wife. What a combo. Are we sure they are not all the same person? Interesting. Yours truly, oh dear, has no one told her when in a hole to stop digging. But of course, as I have explained, narcissist that she is not going to be able to stop because this is going to keep coming up on her radar. It will threaten her sense of control. Of course, she's slightly stymied by the absence of money, but in the meantime, rather than just think, I haven't got the money, I need to move on and do something with my life, she still lodges this notice of appeal to prevent time running against her, pending her looking to try and scramble the money together, to then try and nullify the threat to control by getting it back into court. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.